Yes.
Folks, we are live and we are welcoming you all to the Wrestling with Reality podcast. My name is Chris Klaus, as always, joined by Eric Malikian, and our guest today is the one and only Larry Ludden, aka Larry Lane. You saw him back in the day, worldwide WWF, WWE journeyman, enhancement talent, call it what you want. Larry Ludden. Hey, I was there in Long Beach, the big match with Bob Backlund. We'll talk about that.
Wow.
And I gotta say, for a young kid to be there at the Long Beach Arena and see the great sportsmanship with the handshake after you lost, that brought tears to a kid's eyes, and it's a great inspiration and role model, especially when you get your shoulders pinned and you're still big enough to shake hands with the former champion, Bob Backlund. We'll talk about all that, but yeah, we've seen him on WWF television back in the day against all the greats, and you've been doing a whole heck of a lot with some seminars and all that. We're going to talk about all that. Larry, thank you. Welcome to the Wrestling with Reality podcast.
Oh, there's nothing in the world I like better than talking about wrestling and going down memory lane. And I, really grateful for the opportunity. Thank you for having me, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Larry. Larry, before we go on, we were talking before we came on the air today. We're going to basically let you teach us about the lost art of professional wrestling, the way pro wrestling should be, as far as, just grabbing people by their heartstrings and by the true emotions that capture the audience. And basically the reason we all fell in love with pro wrestling back in the day.
Great. Let me just clarify, one thing. 2 points I want to make. The first point is in no way, shape, or form am I here to, be derogatory towards the current, WWE product. I think the level of athleticism, and you just see the cardio training these athletes, men and women, and the women are awesome. The dedication that they have to have is just mind-boggling. They're certainly a lot more athletic than the main crew of individuals when I wrestle. So that's the first thing, is I'm not here to really degrade the current product. I'm just going to really show the differences between the two. And, really just to get into how much wrestling has changed. One of the points I bring up, if you watch a pay-per-view nowadays, whether it be a SummerSlam or anything along those lines, they seem to have 12 to 14 unique moments in every pay-per-view. It seemed like every other match, every other vignette, every other something catastrophic or something huge happens. And it wasn't like that, going through the late 80s and 90s. There was a crescendo on the shows where maybe you would get 2 or 3 unique moments. So, there's a lot of differences between the product back then and now. Another one is, the only derogatory thing I have about the current product is, you almost sound foolish nowadays if you try to protect the business. It's gone a total 180, and for them to have shows like Raw, a 2-hour Raw or 3-hour Raw, however long it is, and then they advertise documentaries that start right after the show ends that completely expose the business. Mm-hmm. And that if anything drives me crazy, it's when that happens. When I was in the locker room and I started out, if somebody yelled kayfabe, we would dive headfirst over our gym bags and shove our heads into the gym lockers, just so people wouldn't see us talking to one another. And it was almost blasphemous mm-hmm. to do that. And nowadays they don't even attempt to do it. And that's the one thing that really, really rubs me the wrong way.
Did you ever think that we would see that day come? Because I'll be honest, I never even thought that day would come. I got into the business in the mid to late 90s, so it was still happening. It was still, that kayfabe was still going on. It was kind of the end of that era, but I got to experience and get into the business at that time. And even as far as wrestling came, and as at that time, as far as, stuff was happening, you know, did you still even see and imagine that day would come? Because I did not.
The only thing that kind of out tipped the hand that it may happen was there was the Vince McMahon, one of the times that I forgot what he had to say, it was entertainment, something for licensing reasons.
Yeah.
I forget what the reason was. And I never thought taxes.
Athletic commission and
correct.
And,
yeah. That's
yeah.
what it was, because the athletic commission, and they had to say it was entertainment. Otherwise there would have been other testing and other types of insurances and all this and that. So they had to come out and say it. But that was said like through the newspaper, very almost clandestine. They said it and then they moved past it. But then, I think 1997 Survivor Series. I mean, that's the date. If you want to talk about the catalyst for erasing kayfabe, it was the Montreal Screwjob. People. I always thought that was a work within a work. I always thought that Brett was in on it because everything worked out so perfectly for everybody. But if I always believe if Brett was in on it, then it would have been exposed by now. I mean, they wouldn't have kept it. We're going close to 30 years, 27 years.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it was an actual screw. I didn't think that for many years. I thought for sure that everybody would come clean, but apparently it was, but either way, I think that was the catalyst for completely erasing kayfabe.
I remember. By the way, just a little technical housekeeping. Eric, Rob Crayz needs a link sent to him. He just texted me.
Okay.
Okay. I tried sending it, but I don't think it went through. But anyway, so I tend to agree with that, and I mean, during the same time, you had like the Hall and Nash going over to WCW and kind of using their real names, and you didn't really see that before. So yes, things were changing. I remember more recent, which was, in the mid 2000s, right, is when the shoot interviews started surfacing.
Sure.
They didn't explode overnight, but you get one, you get two, and then we got to this point where pretty much every name in the business now has done one. I remember the day, though, for me, that I saw that was it. It was over, which was once WWE on their network started airing the Broken Skull sessions with Austin, having Vince, having Undertaker, and everybody else. Now it's like, okay, the company WWE, not only are they fighting in an industry where they got to fight these shoot interviews now surfacing, now they're joining in on it. Now
Sure.
They're doing these shoot interviews. Now to me, that was like, okay, now it's officially done. It's officially over. They're doing them now. Because in a sense, if you remember when the internet exploded, Vince actually held off with the internet as long as he could. Like in 2005 and 6, there were a lot of fans saying, why doesn't WWE have a better website? This, that. They were holding and fighting it as much as they could. And then I guess 10 years later, once they, started airing these shoot interviews, it's like, oh my gosh, that's it. It's done. They're not fighting this shoot interview. They're not era, RF videos. They're joining them now. They're
Sure.
doing them. Undertaker's on, Vince is on, Bret Hart. They're all on there. And I get, from a business point, they have to do that. If they don't do the shoot interviews themselves, the RF videos and all these and channels like this are going to kind of take that over. And it was, Vince had to do something that he never wanted to do at that point. But in turn, I felt that you're right, Larry. Like at that time, the screw job, that was the beginning of it. And then when I saw that once WWE started doing their own shoot interviews, I think that was the end, the other side of the spectrum. Okay, it's done. That's it. It's over.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think Vince had to devalue the other companies that were doing. So the only way you devalue them is what they're attempting to do. They did themselves. And then the other one was WCW. The whole when it was Russo and the Hall, Nash, Jarrett, the Hogan. They were pinning each other. That was past the point of no return. It was lost.
Right.
There was no coming back.
By the way, I want to welcome Rob Crayz.
Hey, Rob.
There he is.
How you doing?
Wrestling with Reality podcast. Crayz, Rob, welcome.
What's going on, guys?
What's going on? We got the Larry Ludden, Larry Lane here.
I've been listening in, so I was listening to the show before I came in.
Awesome. But yeah, no, Larry, I mean, it's almost like it happened in some ways. It happened from Montreal Screw, let's say, to the Broken Skull sessions, right? It's a long period of time, but in the grand scheme of professional wrestling is how long it's been around. That's kind of overnight that all this happened. Again, when I got into the business, a lot had changed by the time I got in, but I still would never have imagined it becoming the way it is now, where it's like you said, it's now it looks foolish to protect the business.
Yeah,
I'd never thought I'd see that.
You sell if you try to protect the business, now you're the mark.
Yeah,
you're the mark now, and that's there's a saying, the many years ago the marks were in the seats. They're not only in the seats anymore.
Very true.
Yeah, sometimes they're in the ring.
But at the same time, for somebody that's been in, and I still like when there's these little moments, not as a whole, but there's these little moments where you can still work people. You know what I mean? Like you can take one little angle and kind of work, and then they're gonna see through it eventually. But you can get them every once in a while here and there.
Yeah, no, you can get them here and there. I mean, it's like I said earlier, it's the problem. One of the problems is that the fans have been conditioned where if it's a 3.5 hour show, they have to have 3.5 hours of unique things happening throughout the show. They're not going to respond. I remember the old WrestleManias going back early. You get 2 or 3 marquee moments. And there was a crescendo. Now the whole show is a crescendo. Every match is a crescendo. But it's different. But like I said, I'm not against the new product. I think the level of athleticism that you see, just if you look at the cardio conditioning and what they're doing in the ring, the massive amount of bumps they're taking. The massive. I mean, it's just unbelievable the bumps that they're taking in the ring right now. But every so often you see them mess up. I'll give you an example. I picked one up on the Elimination Chamber. I actually, now that I have Peacock, I don't pay anymore for wrestling. I get to watch it at my house, so I don't mind. And they did an angle where Randy Orton does that DDT off the rope, where the guy's opponent's legs are on the rope. But he DDTs them to the outside, where it's, quote unquote, a steel platform. And he injures his back. And the story was the rest of the match. Okay, he aggravated a back injury, so that's going to be the selling point through the elimination. Randy Orton has a bad back. So that's the story. 2-3 minutes in that story, LA Knight does the same exact move to somebody. The same exact move, lands the same exact way, and pops right up. So, I mean, to someone who's been around and who's cynical like me, I mean, a lot of fans aren't going to pick it up. But if one wrestler does the same move and it destroys his back, number 2, why would the other wrestler do the move later? That, you would have to think that there was a lack of communication in there, because if the story is, hey, Randy Orton injures his back on the steel on the Elimination Chamber, and then 2-3 minutes later somebody does the same exact move, they pop up. It's things like that kind of get under my skin.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me being an old cynical guy.
Well, it kind of comes to a point too when maybe that's either the guy's fault in the ring, or maybe the agent or producer that's helping put everything together maybe isn't either quite in on everything or isn't keeping track of everything, how the match is being paced together. Because usually an agent or producer's job is to make the whole story make sense throughout the whole match.
Well, I would imagine you watch those matches, how much stuff they do. They must all fly to Orlando and have like a meeting at the training center and have like a day or two where they just walk through these, matches that have so much, think about a Royal Rumble or Elimination Chamber, all the things that have to go in the course of that match. So I would imagine they don't just show up at the arena that day and discuss it. I would imagine as they get to the arena, that thing's already from point A to point C already planned out.
Is that the way it was when you were there? I know, Larry, and for example, like at a house show or what have you back in the day, a lot of the guys would just get there and kind of plan stuff out. And they know like what to do there's a spot in another match. But as far as TV, again, going back to first time I saw you live was at the February 15th of 93 at the Long Beach Arena. And for a day like that, where you have, 25, 30 matches taping for about a month's worth of television, did you have to really, that was more stringent, was it not, for what was to be done and all that?
No, I mean, first, you also, if you're talking about the enhancement matches, I mean, there's been matches I went out where we didn't play anything. Everything was called out there.
Okay.
But no, I would say those matches were put together in 10 minutes. A lot of basics. Listen, I wasn't getting a lot of offense, so it's a lot of me tucking my chin and making sure I landed properly. But no, very, very short. Not a lot of discussion. If you look at those matches, you could put them together in 10 minutes easy.
Yeah.
Now the independent shows that I worked were different, especially the ones that were Lucha Libre influenced.
Right.
That's like studying for a damn like geometry test in the back. I mean, you're just going over and over and over because you have to, because a lot of people you wrestle out, they don't speak English. So everything was, we would wrestle and we would have like uno, dos, tres, spot 1, spot 2, spot 3. And we knew the finishes. And so, those would take some time. But yeah, the enhancement matches, no, 10-minute stops.
Can I ask you, and I'm sorry, I want to get Rob in here. You've just joined us, Rob, but I want to just, speaking of Lucha Libre real quick, and not to divert, I do Lucha Libre shows announced about once a month or so, and I feel like Lucha and doing shows in the South, I feel like that's kind of the last bastion of the old school. It was what little bit represents that old school we're talking about that's gone. Is it does feel like there's still a little bit of kayfabe there in the South and in Lucha, almost even more in Lucha in some ways. But do you find that still today that when you go to a Lucha show that you still kind of feel that old school more than anywhere else?
Yeah, I think that they dispel belief. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like too, for when I do Lucha shows, the fans, for example, it's like when you go to a regular American wrestling show, it's like they're always talking about, oh yeah, what's going on with this guy really? Oh, let me go on the internet, let me see what's going on, let me see. And in Lucha, they have access to the internet, but I feel like they don't want to even go on the internet and look and do this. They want to not do that. And I that's what I appreciate about it. I don't know if you've noticed.
I think it all has a lot of it has to do with that they watch the TV and that's all. They don't care about what happens behind the scenes. They care about what happens in front. Exactly. And I think with Southern crowds, I mean, obviously, look, dude, most people know it's a work. Let's be totally honest. But at the end of the day, these people already have crappy jobs for 40 hours a week. When they go to the show, they want to dispel belief and yell at the bad guy and cheer for the good guy. Independent shows here in California are dog shit, right? That all they are is so-called smart marks, which is an oxymoron anyway. You're either smart or you're a mark. There's no in between. So they go there to watch gymnastics instead of care about the actual storyline. And I think that, you know, people like heels and baby faces. That's how we grew up, right? So when you go, you walk in and dispel belief. The best thing I ever heard was Jerry Lawler was talking about it in the LA Weekly here in California. And the stupid reporter was asking him about it being not real. And he goes, look, you don't go to watch Jurassic Park and about 10 minutes later, Spielberg jumps out and goes, hey, the dinosaurs aren't real. Because you don't care. You go because you know the dinosaurs aren't real, but it's a good story. This is what's lacking, I think, in major wrestling that is for hardcore fans. The WWE still caters to everyone. They don't have a niche market, right? You watch them and you go, okay, this guy's a bad guy and this guy's a good guy, and they're wrestling for a certain reason. You watch some TV and there's nothing. They're just like, this guy's really good and this guy's really good, and let's let him fight. That works on the lower card, but that to me never works on top.
Do you see that at all, Larry? As far as, I don't know how you mentioned lucha yourself.
Mm-hmm.
As far as that, what we talked about it on the at the onset of this episode, as far as, like, you know, the fans protecting the business, I feel like if there's any place today in pro wrestling that's the business is being protected in any way, if there's any of it left, it would be in the lucha world.
Well, if you look at a map of the United States, I'm as far away from Southern California as you can possibly be. There's no lucha libre presence out here in South Florida, and there never has been. Really, that's why I loved when I lived in California. I love both styles. I mean, I used to love having the ability to be the gringo that could work the luchadors and work the other ones. I mean, I worked all the LA luchadors back from that time. I wrestled every freaking one of them. I can't remember that warehouse, but boy, every Sunday there's no air conditioning. You didn't need it, but we had 200 fans rabid, just going crazy.
Right.
The lucha libre has no presence out here. The one thing I wanted to kind of comment on what Rob had said was, you look at the independent shows right now, and there is no technical wrestling. They hardly even lock up. I mean, if you think about it, let alone wrestling. But here's the reason why I think they do it is because every time. Oh shoot!
You're good. We can still hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. There was a big fight in the NCAA.
Just hit the camera button. You should have on the bottom there, camera next to the microphone.
Yeah, hang on a second.
No, I mean, Rob, I completely agree with a lot of what you're saying, all of what you're saying, and it is amazing how that is the last place where this transition hasn't quite fully happened, because even in Japanese wrestling, this is going on now. Like like you said, there's a mark and then there's smart. There's really no in between. But it's amazing how Japanese wrestling is kind of doing what American wrestling is now. They're saying goodbye. Hey, Larry. All right. They're saying goodbye to the old school, but saying, Larry, that Japanese wrestling, we're talking about lucha kind of preserving, maybe not even purposely preserving this. They're just sticking to what has always worked. And Japanese wrestling kind of went the way, in large part, of the American way. They're getting rid of these traditions. I've a story where we used to go down to when I was doing the original XPW. Sabu would go down. He'd defend the XPW title all over the world, and I would go down to Tijuana when he would do the shows down there. when we would walk to the auditorium, you know, they have the fake brands, the little booths with all the like the fake Nikes, the fake Laker, LA Laker logo, and then they had the knockoff WWE. Okay, so when we'd walk, all these families, mostly dads, grandpas, and grandsons, they'd all walk, and the kids would be like, "Oh, look, it's Stone Cold Steve Austin shirt, it's the John Cena shirt," and the dads and the grandpas would like berate the kids. No, it's John Cena. No, it's Stone Cold. It's a Santo. It's Blue Demon. It's number one. It's, you know, they'd almost like they're gonna hit their kids. I'm sure a couple of them did because they were like, you know, attracted to this WWE stuff. And the dads and the grandpas were like, all of them were so strict to tell their kids, no, don't even talk like that. We're going to see lucha. And so it's instilled in their culture. I don't know if they mean to preserve the culture, but they're doing it by default automatically. And unfortunately, we didn't see that as much, I think, in the Japanese wrestling, you know, when it was super kayfabe at one point. But yeah, it's almost like I think there's going to be a clamoring of fans when fans get so bored of this and want that old wrestling back. I feel like there's going to be a huge resurgence in the lucha world, but I hope the fans, the marks of American wrestling, don't go in and ruin that, you know, that they want so bad to see.
Yeah. With the Lucha Libre, one of the things I wrote down here, it's funny you mentioned that, but I have 3 of my favorite matches of all time. And number 2, believe it or not, is when Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr, it was the hair versus mask against Octagon and El Hijo del Santo. If you want to see drama and grabbing the crowd by their balls,
oh yeah,
I mean, you'll never ever that drama. You talk about 4, even Blue Demon and Spicoli were in on that match, and how they fed into it. I mean, it was like they each only fed into the match one time, but they made it count. Each guy gave a pile driver, and instead of doing it 17 times during a match, they waited and waited and waited. And boy, when Blue Demon hit the return, he returned the favor with the pile driver because that was banned. Remember that it was outlawed. Everybody in the arena saw it, but the referee. And but that match was like maybe my second favorite match of all time. And you watch that match with that Lucha Libre, you can't beat it. And that match would not have gotten that reaction in, let's say, Topeka, Kansas, or in Tampa, Florida. I mean, to have that match where I can't remember if that was Tijuana or if that was San Diego. LA. That was LA. That was LA Sports Arena. That was LA. But the crowd was what, 75%, 50% Latin.
I would say it was more than that.
Yeah, they had them. Unbelievable. If young kids wanted to, you could Google it. It's Eddie Guerrero, Art Barr, Octagon, El Hijo del Santo. Yeah. And if you watch that's if you want to see how you put a match together, that's how you put a match together.
Was that the when Worlds Collide, correct?
I believe so, but it was, they did it perfectly. I think, was it Worlds Collide? I can't remember.
I don't think so. I think that was a AAA show.
Oh, it's just AAA.
Yeah, it was a total AAA show,
and it was at the LA Sports Arena.
Yeah, and not only that, Larry, you want to see a master class on how to be heels?
Yeah.
Those guys had legitimate heel heat, like pseudo Piper heat in the 80s.
Oh yeah,
like those guys were worried for their lives. It was, I mean, when you come out with American flag tights and you call yourself Los Gringos Locos, you're crazy white boys. They had heat and dangerous heat, and they beat up everybody. They went through everyone to get to that match, and then to watch them get their head shaved was amazing. The crowd was, insane.
It's one of the best matches I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it back to what Rob said a few minutes ago about, the lack of baby faces and heels nowadays. I truly believe almost, except for a select few individuals, even up top, I feel like the art of a true heel and true baby face is gone. A lot of times I could tune into a match, and for half the match, I don't even know who the heel and baby face is. Larry, Rob, maybe you guys could bounce back and forth about this, because you guys came in through a time where you knew right away from the moment someone walked out whether someone was a heel or a baby face. What do you think is missing from today's product as far as that? And how can you help guys of today maybe distinguish and kind of set their character forth, whether they're a baby face or a heel?
Look, I think that what we need to do is actually look at old stuff and show new guys old stuff. Look, being a heel, at least for me, the whole point is to never get a pop, right? Everyone wants to do flashy moves instead of give heat and get your ass beat at the end of the match. You can do so much for the storyline with having a good baby face a la Ricky Morton, and then a really good heel like Flair at that particular time. When you walk out and they know, it gives the crowd a chance to choose a side. And if you're a heel and they're cheering for you, it is your job to switch that over very quickly. And I don't think the newer guys, and again, I'm just as generalizing, understand that, because no one can call it in the ring. They go over their 15-minute match, spot after spot after spot after spot. So you can't call a hope spot. You can't call a turnaround. You can't call anything to make the crowd pop, because if you call something and the guy goes, well, we have spot 27 we need to do next, the crowd is, cheering for the baby face, but they can't do anything. So I think it has to go back to basics. You have to understand what a heel does and what a baby face does.
I'll take the other side. I'll take the baby face side. That was 95% of my time I was the face. And you mentioned Ricky Morton. Let's look at three wrestlers in particular. Ricky Morton is one. Dusty Rhodes, Hulk Hogan. None of those guys are tremendous athletes. None of those guys. I never seen Dusty Rhodes do a 450 a 450 splash or anything like that. But they have the three S's. The three S's of being a babyface is very simple: selling, suffering, sympathy. You as a babyface have to grab that 12-year-old kid watching you in row number 2 into the ring with you, and he's got to feel your freaking pain. Too many wrestlers, they rush through going from this move to that move that they discredit the move they just previously took. You're coming up, you're in a reverse chin lock, the crowd's chanting your name, you give him 2 elbows in the stomach, he dropped down, you duck a clothesline, he hits you with a spine buster, oh my God, he's back down. Well, you got to sell that spine buster. You have to stop right there. You have to go to now the heel needs to go to the crowd and talk some smack. That's his job. Don't just start aimlessly kicking him or going to the next move. Acknowledge that move, number one. Number two, get some air. The best workers are in the ring. If you watch the best workers, they master the art of doing nothing. If you give somebody a spine buster, walk around the crowd, give them an evil eye. But when you're giving them the evil eye, walk around the crowd, get your air back in you. Let that baby face come up a little. Let him come up. Dare him to come up. Boom, knock him back down. Throw him in for a backdrop. He sunsets you. Kick him off. Knock him back down. Give him stuff to keep him alive. But that's not there anymore. Mm-hmm. I just don't get it. I mean, it's I understand the art of the athleticism of the mat. They want to do the acrobatic moves. I completely get that, and I have no problem with it. But they devalue their own moves throughout the show. You get to the point where you're on flip off the top rope number 7. Well, what happens is it's almost like they don't even. We used to watch the matches throughout the night, and we would say, "Hey, man, these guys they just did this thing we wanted to do, where you ram your shoulder into the corner." Instead of your shoulder, just go over the rope. Just do something different. That doesn't happen anymore. You'll watch the same spot. That's another thing about the new wrestling. Everybody doing the same spot over again. I mean, you're not creative enough to come up with something else. I mean, that's the same bump, the same spot. I just that drives me crazy. But anyway, that's my take on that part of it.
Well, again, and like Larry, you said earlier, no one's trying to be necessarily derogatory of anything that's going on now, but we're here to learn from you guys, and hopefully everyone else who's out there is taking this in as constructive criticism and on any level could use this to help better themselves, better whatever show they're on, and hopefully help generate and make more money in this business, which is ultimately, I believe, the goal, period. The end of the day.
Yeah.
I think one of the bigger problems too, Larry, is that no one tries to be different, right? Like for me, my later gimmick was I played a crazy guy. I didn't do much. I did heel stuff, but I did my best to be different looking or do different things in the ring, like biting on the rope when people were walking down. Just be different. And now everyone's so cookie cutter, right? That they either want to be somebody who's on TV, or they don't take an extension of themselves and make it up to 12. And I think those are the bigger problems too. It's like they just get stamped out now. It's like we're training all these guys the same and stamp this guy out. And then when you run a local show, right, with your students, every match looks the same because they've been working on this stuff all the time instead of going back maybe even 10, maybe 20 years and looking at wrestling and going, maybe I can do this. I might not get the same kind of pop, but I'm going to tell a different story. And that's the problem. No one's telling different stories. Match 1, match 6, and the main event look exactly the same.
Well, we used to do things where, like, if we were doing an independent show and it was like dark, which obviously the highest number of independent shows are dark, unless nowadays where they show up on Facebook. But I'm talking about TV dark. We would always do something where, let's say we were running 5 matches, 6 matches. After the second match, they interview the babyface in the main event. Maybe he's going to introduce himself to a kid they're giving him a certificate or something for the great job he did at the fundraiser. And the kid, well, out of nowhere, it's, obviously what's going to happen is the heel is going to come out and whack the babyface over with that certificate. It'll probably be his son that's playing the role of the kid. So they'll cue him to start crying to leave the ring. And now you've generated heat for the main event versus it just being a 6th match. I go to a lot of independent shows. When I was, I used to scout wrestlers for Florida Championship Wrestling here. So they flew me to California sometimes, and I got flown up to the Carolinas, and I would watch these matches. And like Rob said, the main event was not a main event. It was just match 6. And it's amazing how often that happens. It's really, I never understood that. I've never understood that whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, when I broke in, I was told by the people in the back, don't do this if you're in this number match. If you're before the intermission, you don't do a moonsault. That's for the top guys. You go out, get yourself over, do a couple of moves, and maybe a high spot, maybe. And I think that's another problem with independence. And again, I'm only talking California because that's all I really know. But no one agents these guys or no one produces a match. They just let them do whatever the hell they want. So,
well, yeah, go ahead.
They end up just killing the main event because the crowd has seen everything known to man by match 6.
I've been a booker two different eras. I was a booker for Florida Championship Wrestling, not the original version, the second coming of it. And there I had a lot of authority, and I didn't crack an iron whip, but I would, if you're over, you're over. If you're under, you're under. And if you didn't agree, it was going to be your last show. Nowadays, you're more like a counselor. My last time doing it, you're more like, oh, it's okay, come on. Because the thing is the reason they're out there, the reason that there's no more wrestling anymore, and the reason you're seeing these insane matches on these independent shows is because the only reason they're not wrestling for the $25. They're wrestling for the opportunity to have that match on their iPhone where they can use it as an advertisement for themselves to try to get to the WWE. So they're doing exactly what they see on television. They're not going to get booked to the WWE doing an international spot or doing chain wrestling or headlock takeovers. They may say, hey, well, that's good. But nowadays, you got to do that moonsault. You got to do that insane tope where the person hits you in the head with the chair as you're coming over the top rope. I mean, it's just some of the things. Have you seen the Facebook of the guy landing on his face off the top of the basketball rim? Did you see that one?
Jeez.
A guy got up in a match, got on top of the basketball rim to do a dive and lost his footing and landed face first on the floor. I mean, that's on Facebook somewhere. And that's insane. That's total, I would say this all the time. The art of wrestling is when people say, oh, I just lay it in, I'm stiff, that's my style. My response is that's because you're not very good. That's the reason you're like that, because you're not very good. The artwork is having good match, entertaining the crowd, making it look solid, but being able to go to Denny's afterwards without missing a tooth, needing staples in the head, needing to take Vicodin, wrapping your elbow up. That was the art of it. We went out there for years. I can honestly say, I never was a world-renowned main eventer, but I wrestled 33 years. Sometimes I wrestled 10 times a year. Sometimes I wrestled 100. 33 years, I never hospitalized anybody. I never dropped someone. I never said, oh, I'm sorry. Maybe a potato here and there. But no one ever had to, never was anyone needing staples. Never anyone had to go. I'm very proud of that. Never, not one opponent in 33 years did I ever have to take to the hospital. Not one time.
Ditto. 20 years.
Yeah.
Nobody. Well, it's funny because when I broke in, there was some guy here in California named Larry Ludden who was showing me how to do things. And I remember you and Scott Cole were in the ring and telling me, oh, throw punches, do this, go home, make sure you don't hit a wall, try to hit the wall, but don't hit it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And the best advice I ever got from you guys was, you know why we don't kill each other? Because I have to work next weekend as well, and the weekend after, and the weekend after. And this is how I make a living. And I was like, oh, that's the work. The work is, you're right. It's fun. Let's say you're doing it as a living or even a hobby. You don't want to kill because I have to go to my real job as well. I have a shoot job that I got to go to on Monday morning. You taught me, at least, coming from just me, that the work is a work. And you're right. Just because you can throw stiff punches doesn't make you good. Anyone can throw a stiff punch. It's not that hard. It's throwing it that it looks so good that people tell you, you can be more snug. I've had people tell me that before, and I went, just sell better.
Just sell better. Just sell better. I mean, that you never say, hey, listen, if someone says, hey, listen, can you tighten it up a little bit? That's a fool. That's an absolute fool to say, I need you to tighten up. I mean, there's got to be something wrong with your mind to sit there. I mean, think about some of the people that we've been in the locker room with. I mean, do you want to tell Rudy to tighten it up a little bit?
Oh, no. My goodness, no.
No way, man. I mean, no. So, I would say, listen, I'll sell for you. I'll make you look good. You don't need to tighten it up. I'll sell well enough for you. But anyway, I remember, Rudy would show up with the motorcycle and we all our butts would pucker. We're like, oh, here we go. Here we go.
They're coming.
They're coming.
They're coming tonight. Oh yeah. Look, like you said, we've all been potatoed every blue moon. And I get that. But generally, if a guy, potatoes the shit out of you, he's saying sorry not too long afterwards. Like, oh, I'm sorry, dude. It's like, all right, cool. And I'm okay with that. It's a business full of big dudes that do crazy moves. But to make a living like that and think that it's okay, you're going to end this is what I always heard. You're always going to run into a bigger fish.
Sure.
So you might potato somebody and then he's going to pop your eye out of your head. So you better be careful with what you do. But if you're just go out and work, that's the whole point of wrestling, is to dispel belief and make people believe for your 18 minutes in the ring that it's so real that they're scared. That's my thing. Yeah. I just, I want to be entertained too. I've been to plenty of WWE house shows, and the best matches aren't the ones that have 400 spots. It's the ones that the guys entertained me for whatever reason it was. It could have been a comedy spot. It could have been a crazy bump. It could have been the guy walking to the ring, getting heat. That just entertained me. And you don't have to kill yourself to entertain me.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Jake Roberts, he was as basic as they get. Yeah. And those interviews that he did, he pulled you into that interview.
Yeah.
I mean, when he was the heel version of Jake Roberts, when he interviewed, you said, "Oh man, he's gonna kill this." I almost said a bad word. He's gonna kill this. He's gonna kill this guy. I mean, they were just awesome, and he would get out there, and he was doing house shows with Bad News Brown, where the entire match was as Jake comes in, he puts the snake away. As he rolls back in, Bad News Brown is on him. And Jake doesn't get offense the whole match. He gets maybe a hope spot, a few punches. He kicks him, but the entire match is Bad News Brown. And Bad News Brown gets over him with a microphone, telling him how worthless he is. And then out of nowhere, he goes to pick Jake up, and Jake lands behind him and DDTs him and just lays on him 1, 2, 3. And the crowd went nuts. I mean, absolutely berserk. And it was, I love stuff like that. Jake, I'm a big Jake fan. Jake and, we lost Terry Funk since the last time we talked. I mean, if you ever want to say who worked with the most energy of anybody you've ever seen, it's got to be him. He grabbed the crowd unbelievably.
Yeah. Speaking of Funk, I mean, I got a few stories, but I remember when he didn't just work the crowd. He worked all of us in the back. He worked the cameraman. Yeah. And to the point where everybody was murmuring in the back. This was at the LA Sports Arena. And it was, I think he's really pissed. I think he's really pissed. I mean, it's great looking back that we were all, thank God we were all worked, because it put the whole thing over even more.
I was lucky enough to work him. So
wow.
It was it was funny. He was so quiet in the back.
Yeah.
Like the most nicest guy in the world.
That's why we believed when he did go nuts. And after he came back through the curtain, oh shit, he's still mad. Oh, what happened?
It was him and Freddie Valentine here against me and Cincinnati Red. We go over everything, and me and Red are in the ring first, and the music hits, and Funk comes through the curtain in the door there, and he goes, "Motherfucker!" and like big. And I look over at Red and I go, "He's gonna kill us." And Red goes, "Oh yeah." And I was like, "Oh shit." He was really good in the ring. I would say everything was good. He did throw some pretty stiff punches, but not trying to hurt you. Just, they were snug.
Yeah.
But everything else was so light. I knew I was only going to work him maybe once ever. I'm like, "Hey, can you put me in a spinning toe hold later?" And he goes, "Not a problem, man. I'll grab your leg, just bump." Super nice guy.
Yeah.
Like the easiest guy. So, we're lucky that we got to see guys like that because they understood the business. He understood that if he came out yelling through that curtain right away, he already had the crowd.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys watch a lot of ECW?
Yeah.
I mean, think about all the athleticism and all the craziness they had on those shows. I worked with a lot of those guys, and out of all the guys that was there, I've always found the most instant biggest pop was when Sabu's manager, why did I just forget his name?
Alfonso?
Fonzie. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. When he blows the whistle from the curtain and the crowd hears the whistle, they go apeshit. It's unbelievable. I mean, he's got them. Yeah, Alfonso he works on a lot of shows here, but yeah, I remember when he was managing Sabu, I believe, at the time, and when he blew the whistle, that had the crowd going. But Funk was the best, though.
Simple things work. I saw a house show. Well, it was Backlund was in the WWE then. I want to say it was like the presidential Backlund. Anyway, he came to the ring. He was a heel. He stomps all the way down in the ring, gets in. I think he's working Holly. Bell hits, ding, ding. Holly goes to lock up. Backlund shit cans out, starts walking back to the dressing room. Crowd goes boos, comes back, gets in the ring. Here comes Holly, shit cans himself again, starts walking to the back. All the way to the curtain booing. Ends up getting back in, turns around, puts his arms in the air. They boo him. Holly schoolboys him 1, 2, 3, and that's the end of the match. But he had massive amounts of heat, and he did nothing. Zero. And those are the things that I think young workers need to really look at and go, he didn't do anything. He didn't go out and take 20 bumps in the first, 3 minutes. He didn't do anything, and he could have ended up working a really good match, but obviously where they were on the card wasn't the plan. There's small idiosyncrasies that they're missing out on. Like, I worked a lot of shows with Honky Tonk, and I don't know if you had, Larry, but
many.
Listening to him put together a match was amazing.
Yeah,
because I picked him up, him and Coco Beware. We picked up at a hotel room, took him to this show, and he was in the back, and he goes, "Coco, I think I'm gonna take 4 bumps tonight." and here's me and Byron like just breaking in, and I was like, "Did he say 4 bumps?" And he did. He took 4 bumps. He put all the heat on Coco the whole time, and at the end took 4 bumps, and they went home. It was magical to watch. And he had the crowd eating out of his hand.
Amazing. That's not going to happen. We're not just years away from that. We're a full generation removed from that. There's no way it's ever going to come back because there's nobody around that even remembers that. Mm-hmm. I mean, what would you say out of the fan base nowadays has an old school mentality? It's got to be under 10%.
Yeah,
it's got to be under 10%. I mean, I just even with I have, like I said, Peacock, so I have access to everything. And what you watch nowadays and what you watch, it's a different product.
Yeah, it's a different game.
Yeah, it's different, completely different.
Now, interestingly enough, that the crowds, like you said, Larry, doesn't remember that. You're right. I agree. Thinking about that, though, is there a potential, because they don't know and they're not familiar with it, is there a potential that this can be done now? Because you're almost performing in front of virgin eyes that are so unfamiliar with this that you can pull something like this off, ironically, to a crowd now who could potentially be worked more than any other crowd back in the day.
I thought for a while that AEW had a chance to perhaps. I don't know. I want to make sure I say this properly. I can't say that I follow them religiously, but I think number one, they didn't go head to head with WWE, so that's fine. But you can't. When they have the talent come out and berate the WWE, you're not going head to head with them. The talent that goes out there and says the bad things about WWE for AEW, they don't know how bad they're effing themselves. I mean, they really don't. But I think if AEW had made their product a little more old school, because they had incredible talent there, they had the opportunity, but they should have been in smaller arenas. They should have been on college campuses, them going into those huge arenas that they weren't going to sell out, and take on that overhead. They did the same things, that I want to say Bischoff did, in the fact that he put them in a sea of red ink. That AEW product should have been more wrestling related. They made it more storyline related. I thought they had a very athletic. If I was running AEW, I would have focused in a little more on wrestling. I wouldn't have tried to challenge a WWE product, and I would have put myself in smaller venues to keep my costs down. But I thought AEW had a chance for a while. But if you see some of the photos now on Facebook of the shows that they're doing, 400 people in a 7,000 seat arena, I think they're on a Titanic right now, I think.
Yeah, I think that from what you're talking about, Chris, could it be done? Maybe. But I think you would have to tremendously train the crowd to the point where everything after maybe the intermission would have to be somewhat of a modern product and sprinkle in some guys. I think if you took one or two, maybe 2 or 3 guys, and then maybe a tag team or two in your product, whoever you are, and go, look, we're going to see what happens, and we're going to have you work an old school match with more heat and work towards a big high spot at the end. But you'd have to train the crowd, I think, a lot more. Could it be done? Maybe. The problem is they watch TV. So you're really fighting against the machine, right? But I think it's a local territory show. Sure. I've talked to Eric a bunch of times about NXT and how the Florida-based program is. And look, I think that the center down there is amazing. And I understand why they want everyone to go down there. But I think they really kind of crapped the bed when what they should have started thinking of is going, look, we're going to have NXT Texas, NXT California, NXT Oregon, NXT Minnesota, and NXT Florida, and run them all as separate, different promotions so you can work different crowds in different ways. And then you just run it like a territory, right? When the guy starts losing his steam in Florida, you send him to Texas because they're all under contract. So who cares? I think you'd get more out of it just because you'd have guys coming back to the company. And I mean, as of the big companies, let's say SmackDown or Raw, with a different style. The reason the 80s were so great is that when McMahon brought in guys from the territories, they all worked differently. So when they got in there, you liked them for what they did. Like you said, Jake worked a different style than Piper, and he worked a different style than Hogan and Tito and Valentine. They all worked different styles. That's what made him unique. Now you watch NXT, and like I said before, they're just stamped out. It's the same guys training them and going, okay, you're going to learn how to do a leapfrog, and you're going to learn how to do a hip toss, but they don't know where to put them in the match and make them look different. It's like when I say, a certain move, the first thing that happens in your head is you go, it's that guy. If I say an arm drag, the three of you think of either the same guy or your own guy. And that's where now, if I say that in the current product, you don't go, oh, because when I say an arm drag, I think Ricky Steamboat. And now if you say, hey, who does a great arm drag? You go, nah.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And we're not making stars anymore. We're just stamping out low mid-card guys.
Well, I'd like to talk about what Chris said. I mean, I don't know if anybody's been watching since The Rock's been back for the last few weeks.
I've checked it out.
Yeah. What The Rock's doing is magnificently head and shoulders above what everyone else is doing. And everything he's doing is the old school meat and potatoes so far. It's nothing, that hasn't been done in the past. And the reason why I think he's getting over And look, he's someone who grew up because his family, you know, his dad popped around territory to territory. He knows the tricks of the trade. He knows, simply put, the meat and potatoes of what works and what doesn't. And to what he's doing compared to everyone else, it is so drastically different, and he's head and shoulders more over than anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he also has the Attitude Era as a crutch, and I'm not trying to crap on him. I do agree that he's not doing anything that's new, right? It's not like he's just being a heel version of the Hollywood guy. He's like, you know, and I'm okay with that. I think the guys that are underneath him right now, though, are great. Cody understands the business. Seth Rollins came from the Indies and Ring of Honor, where, look, Ring of Honor of old was more old school than you can say Ring of Honor is now. So there's a lot to be said about that. But I agree. I think that they're using the simplest forms of what wrestling is. Make you hate the two guys on one side and make you love the two guys on the other, and to buy the pay-per-view. So I think you're right, though. They can all learn from that. They can see that he's going to sell that pay-per-view with his mouth. They haven't. The only thing he's done to Cody Rhodes is smack the taste out of his mouth. And then if you've watched SmackDown, I didn't watch it this past weekend, Friday, but I did see the highlight. Cody gave him the return, right? The end of that show was Cody smacking the taste out of The Rock's mouth. Now you care. Now you want to see what's going to happen next Friday night. On something where there was almost zero violence. It was a lot of talking and a couple of slaps, but now you care. Again, simple.
And one of the things that they're doing that I do like a lot, you know, like I says, I don't want Mr. Negative, but I do like the fact that they finally realize, hey, our champions need to stick around for a while. You know, they were interchanging that title every pay-per-view. They were changing them like underwear. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And to have, Gunther and Reigns and the Usos had the title, the champions actually mean something nowadays. I think what happened was everything was geared towards WrestleMania, and the streak was bigger than the title back then. You know, the streak was more over than who was the champion. But I do like the fact that we've had some really long title reigns by the champions. I think that's been awesome. Spectacular.
It'll mean so much when they drop them.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it will.
So much. Whoever beats Gunther, they better ride that wave, because he is like, he's really a traditional heel, right? He comes out, he's like, I've beat everybody, but he still gets them over as being good. Like, because he wants his baby faces to be really good wrestlers. This guy was great. I beat him. This guy's awesome. Great. Beat him. The Miz been here 20 years. Really good. For headline WrestleMania. Beat him. There's something to that, where whoever beats him is going to now be on a really big level, and they could really push a good baby face out of that, and maybe even have Gunther chase after.
I think though that just the titles being held long, I think that alone, agree, I would think that's the best thing that's happened in modern wrestling in a long time, and we're seeing that with both titles. But I don't even know if I think just the titles being held long is the most important puzzle piece there, because I mean, if you look at when Randy Savage lost to Steamboat, to bring up Ricky Steamboat again, for Rob was saying, or when you look at Davey Boy beating Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title, those were big deals. But the guys that won, Steamboat and Bulldog, they didn't have long title reigns. They actually lost the titles pretty quick.
Well, you know the story on Steamboat, how that happened.
Yeah, wanting time off. And
I mean, why would you win? You won maybe the greatest athletic match in the history of WrestleMania thus far. They give you the title. I mean, you need time off now. I mean, I mean, he must have had some stuff going on. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I would probably tell my wife, listen, babe, I'm gonna hang on. I mean, maybe that's why I've been married 3 times, because I don't. I've had more weddings than anniversaries. But I would probably say, honey, listen, we'll take time off later. Let me run with this title. This is my money shot. And but to win that match and then need time off, I don't understand that one. I can't understand that one.
I completely agree. And then, Davey Boy had his problems as to why. But my point is, I don't even think it matters as much what happens to the guy who wins it. I just think these belts being held for a long time and having that big payoff match, that alone is a breath of fresh air. I agree with what's going on right now. I mean, we all remember the Bulldog and Brett at Wembley. We all remember Steamboat Savage at WrestleMania 3. And, I mean, it would be nice if those guys had a long run after that, but really it doesn't even matter almost, in my opinion, that what happened after that big payoff match. And now hopefully we're going to start seeing stuff like that with these long title reigns, is that big payoff match, that it's finally going to mean something again, these titles.
Yeah.
The pops will be massive. I just like if you can springboard your next guy, right? And obviously we can talk about Cody and Reigns, and that's a whole other thing. Whoever comes out of the Gunther thing, I think it should be somebody you're trying to push, right? Who's maybe not a main eventer, like maybe bring in Steiner's kid and have him go over on him. Something to where it springboards this guy into another level. So then when he drops the strap, he's still on that same level and he's still drawing money, and you can position him on the card somewhere else.
Right.
That was the whole point, right? Of the middle belts. The middle belt should have been about pushing new talent. There's a lot to be said with the product right now. I mean, I don't watch it religiously, but I do watch it now. They've changed it for sure, and for the better, I think. I don't watch AEW, so I watched the first half of the very first show and never watched it afterwards. It's just not my thing, and I know a ton of guys that work there. It's just not my style. I love heels and faces, and I'm not a fan of Japanese wrestling. There's, how many times can you take a running power bomb and kick out? You know what I mean? Like, to me, it's just, if you want to expose the business, watch New Japan, because it's just, spot after spot after finish, and a guy kicks out, and then the finish of the match is like a roll up out of nowhere. It's like, you mean the 20 pile drivers didn't kill him?
Yeah.
And again, that could be just the bitter old veteran in me, but I just don't. It doesn't entertain me enough, and I hear AEW has stuff in between that probably would. I just don't want to put my time into it, and it's unfortunate.
What people told me about Japan was what really hurt Japan was that, you go back to when it was Hansen and Gordy and Steve Williams and Doug Furness. Those guys didn't go there for less than $10,000. I mean, they weren't getting on the plane for less than $10,000, and they were usually getting another $20,000 when they were there. And then the story was, well, people said, well, I'll come over there, just fly me up. I want to work. Give me a couple hundred, and and that just killed it. That's exactly what hurt Japan, was a bunch of guys hoard themselves out and hopped on that. I made that flight to Japan when I was in the military. You're going to have to give me some money to hop on a plane that long. I mean, there's just no way. I can't sleep on an airplane. So the jet lag going over there is way worse than when you come back. Going over is the worst. But anyway, that's what happened there. So I used to love the Japanese. Remember Augie?
Oh yeah,
Augie Lloyd. We used to sit down in his house before shows and just watch Japanese wrestling and figure out what we were going to do to each other. It was just great. But nowadays, it's gone. It's completely gone.
I think that the thing that really is missing from the young guys is being able to take small things from different kinds of promotions and put them into your own style. Instead, like if you're a mark for New Japan, you only want to work New Japan style. Instead of going, okay, I can take this spot, and this spot, and then I can go to 1987 WWF and go, I can take this, and this, and I'm going to take that, and I can take Jake Roberts' heels interviews, and then mash them all together, because that's what we did. I learned from a core group of guys like Larry and Rick Sadis and all these guys, and they taught me a core. And then I was really into certain people. Like I loved Cactus and I loved Bret Hart and I loved these guys. And I went, well, I'm just going to get all this shit and I'm going to smack it all into one thing and try to make a gimmick from it. Yeah. Instead of just going, I'm going to just be this guy. I'm going to go and, I want to be the next Daniel Bryan. And that doesn't work. That we already got one of those. You have to do something different. And I think that you're walking a razor's edge now of what you can do as a heel, right? Because everything's so PC. So getting over as a heel in 1985 was very easy to incite a crowd. And then in the 90s, it was easier. In 2000, it wasn't bad. Now it's horrible because you can't say anything to them without them, wanting to cancel you.
Well, I looked at it as though if you're going to call yourself a good performer, a good professional, a good worker, to sit there and say you could only work this style is redundant. I mean, I work Lucha Libre. We'll figure it out. Let's go. Mm-hmm. We'll go over, if we have to go over it and get an interpreter, but Lucha Libre, I had no problem working that. If they wanted to work the brawling style, figure it out. Old school, you should be able to, as a professional. If they want to go old school, make it happen. If they want to go lucha, make it happen. I mean, I wrestled a guy out here in Florida. Funny story. I won't make it long. His name, he went as Terry the Anvil Neidhart. Obviously, he was an indie ripoff of Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and we wrestled him in a place called Sebring, Florida, which is just north of Lake Okeechobee, about an hour from Tampa. And he comes up to me, and I knew him, and we were going to have a match. He says, Larry, I got to tell you something. What's that? He says, I'm a terrible wrestler. I said, what? He goes, I can't remember anything. I said, all I could do was kick and punch and brawl. I said, all right, we'll make it happen. And I said, here's the sequence. We're gonna work and brawl. You'll cut me off. You'll hit me with a chair. We'll work and brawl again. The next time you go to hit me with a chair, I'll take it from you. I'll go to hit you with a chair. The referee will pull it from me, and that gives you my back, and you key me again. And then finally at the end, after you've been beating me, you're going to gotta hit me with a chair. I'm going to duck. You're going to hit the turnbuckle. You're going to shake your hands vibrating. Then I'm going to finally hit you with the chair and schoolboy you. So I finally get the chair from him. I've been getting whacked for, at this point, 15, 16 minutes. He goes to hit me. I duck. He hits the corner. He's shaking his hand. I go get the chair. I go to give him a shot, and I feel fingernails dug into my head, just thick fingernails and cursing. And it was his mother. His mother was sitting right there. She came in over the ground. She wasn't smart to anything. And she had me like this, and I finally got her off, and I hit him in the head, and I schoolboyed him, and I went in the back, and I got little bits of blood in my head. I was like, dude, what the F is going on? He goes, dude, that's my mother, man. She was that we had her going so much. She thought that everything was legit, and she dug her fingernails into my head.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That's kind of like there was an old lady out here in Compton at the All Nations Center. Me and Byron worked a match with Sadist and I want to say Jason from out in San Bernardino. And we're out there and Rick tells me, and they're playing the baby faces, and he goes, just so you know, there's an old lady out here that has a purse. And if you're outside, she's going to hit you with it. And I giggled. I was like, yeah, that's pretty funny. We're blah, blah, blah. Rick gets me, shit cans me outside right in front of her. and I'm still looking in the ring, right? And the next thing I know, wow, and she smacks the living hell out of me with this purse. And in my head, I'm like, she must have a brick in it, because it hurts like really bad. and I roll back in, and of course, here's Sadist waiting for me. Damn, dude, I told you she was going to get you. I was like, are you insane? But it was those matches, like you say, where we incited people so much that they were part of the show without being part of the show.
Yeah.
Now people or fans want to be the show.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they yell certain things or have these, they sing the songs of the workers and all these things. We need to push them back into the seat and not make them part of the show.
Yeah.
Or if they are part of the show, that have it in a way like your example there, where they're part of the show and they don't even know they're part of the show.
Correct. Yeah. They think they're part of the show because we've allowed it.
Right.
And that's, I worked a show in Pacoima, and there's a guy, yelling at me from the crowd. He was part of the show, but it's because I allowed him to be part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happened to be you. And years later, I didn't realize it. Those are the things where there was a guy who worked for, I want to say Paul out here for MPW. He went by Furious George, and he worked, he came to the shows in Simi Valley when we were working with Gary Key and all them out there. And he always would yell things from the crowd. And I was working Alcatraz, and he's like, pile driver. And I pull him in, and I go to lift him up, and I push him back down, and I go, I don't let anyone call my match, because he thought he was smart to the business. So you have to control the crowd, right? That's the whole point of give them enough, but don't make them part of the show. And that's what we need to teach the younger people, how to work a crowd to where they're jumping because you're telling them to jump, not because they're asking for a move and then you do it and they pop for you.
Well, the student promotions, they're, like you said earlier, they practice the match for 17 days in a row, and they have tunnel vision. They're impervious to working the crowd. I used to try to tell them, why do 7 spots? Why don't you do 3 spots and take those extra 5 to 7 minutes to work the crowd? Incorporate working the crowd into your match. I mean, I did healing. I wasn't, 90% of what I did was a face. But when I was a heel, as I walked out there, regardless of what the size of the arena was, because I'll tell you this, if you could work 10 people, you could just as easily work 10,000. There's no difference between working 10 and 10,000. It's actually harder to work 10 because you have to create the ambiance. At 10,000 people, the ambiance is there. So the way you create that ambiance is you go out there and you see who's giving you the dirtiest look as you walk in there. And you just F that person relentlessly. That's your mark. That's your I don't want to say the word that's your bitch, but that's how you're that's how you're gonna get, you find that one person. But like I said, if you could work a small crowd, you would have an easier time working a large crowd.
Yeah.
And that I think is part of it. That's what we used to do when me and Byron were together. We'd find the one person in the crowd that we knew no matter what, if we get this person, the rest of the night they're going to hate us. We worked AIWA down there at the street fair. Yeah, we worked a street fair down there, and there was a guy in the front row with a insanely attractive Hispanic girl, like out of control. And so me and Byron walk up to her and we're like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And her man is standing next to her or sitting next to her. And me and Byron are like, ditch this chump and come with a real man like me. And he stands up and he's probably 5'5", maybe. And I'm like, hey, Byron, you better grab a phone book so this guy and me and him can talk eye to eye. And he was livid. And during the match, I have Joey Chaos in a chin lock, and I'm still talking to her. Well, of course, halfway through, I tell Joey and Lester, send me in front of them, and Lester laid him in, and I mean good. And this guy was jumping up and down, and I paid him off. He got his pop from us, but we worked him, and it was a predominantly Hispanic crowd, and I don't know a lot of Spanish, but I know a lot of cuss words in Spanish. And I would use all of them, and they would yell back at me in English because I think that they just knew that I was, inciting the crowd. Those are the small things where I didn't have to do anything. Yeah. I wasn't getting hurt. I wasn't taking a chair shot. I was just simply telling a person in the front row that they're stupid. And the payoff was, I'm going to get hit later on. And sometimes the most simplest things work way better than the hard ones.
Right.
You can do 20 spots in a row. Do you know which one they remember? The last one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's another thing that you're talking about difference is, and this is what a lot of younger wrestlers didn't understand, is wrestling is about cardio. There's a lot of wrestlers out there that they go to this. I don't know about now, but I know we used to go to the schools and they would come in there, do a couple 3/4 rolls, take a couple of bumps, couple of stand-up suplexes. They practice one move, and that was their workout. And then I would just watch these guys, and I would try to explain to them, okay, that's good. Stand-up suplex. You could do a stand-up or you could do a tope over the top rope. That's good. But can you do it at the 14-minute mark? Can you do it after 14 consecutive minutes? And that's where a lot of injuries happen. If you watch a lot of injuries that are on the independent scene, is all of a sudden after 12 minutes, that stand-up suplex, instead of being straight up and leading off with one leg and letting the other one follow and falling flush, he collapses with you. And you take a crappy bump on your hip or you land on your neck. And I think the wrestling schools, I think they need to do a better job of the cardiovascular endurance training, because that was something that, unless you've been in the ring, when you get to that 10-minute mark, all of a sudden your opponent gets a little heavier, or the ropes seem to get a little higher, or, your feet seem to weigh a little more, or you're not moving quite as fast. And that's the thing about the WWE product. Their training has to be unfreaking believable. Right.
Yeah.
It's unmatched. I mean, you watch these 40-minute matches and they're still going and going. I used to hate we would run, because everything wasn't planned out back then. A lot of things were on the fly. And I used to always get so mad. I would me and Cole wrestle 45-minute matches sometimes. Me and Redondo had 40-minute matches. And the match ends. And next thing I know is some ring announcer has a microphone in my face while I'm hyperventilating. The match just ended. I'm just attempting to get some semblance of air back. And we didn't talk about it. We didn't plan it. And all of a sudden he shows a microphone. He has to pretend like you're not winded. Oh, that drove me crazy.
If you watch a lot of like old school Memphis and Georgia, they did that shit all the time. And the guys were like,
yeah,
like just gassed out. And a matter of fact, I just watched something on YouTube the other day. Eric Embry, it was during one of the super clashes, and Embry worked maybe 17 minutes, and he rolls out and he had just won the Texas title back, or the WCCW light heavyweight, and he's got the belt on his shoulder, and they're like, "What do you say, Eric?" And he was literally gassed out, taking these huge breaths, and he's like, "I won the light heavyweight title," and I was like, "Wow!" And now that you say that, it happened a lot in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's unbelievable! You used to drive me nuts. Ron Head was a good guy, but I wrestled Jason Redondo on the Father's Day show. We did some amazing stuff. We were doing topes over at top rope. We really went after it. The match had just ended, and there was the microphone right in my face. I'm like, come on, man, give me a second, man. Let's do a vignette later or something. Why now? But yeah, those were good times, though. I did want to mention. I wanted to do a shout out to all my friends who I've stayed in touch with from California. It means a lot to me that we've been able to stay in touch. Jason Redondo, Scott Cole, the Bezos, both, Scott, rest his soul. I miss him. I miss the guy a lot. Tony, Gary Key, Rob Allen, Augie, Vandal Drummond, the Hanna brothers, Jesse Hernandez and, Billy Anderson. I mean, Victoria. I know I'm going to forget somebody. I'm going to be upset. Of course, you, Rob. We were family back then, and I'm glad that we stayed in touch. I really am.
This
means a lot to me.
Thank you. I was just going to ask you that. I know we ran over our hour time limit, but man, this is it doesn't feel like we've been on for more. Feel like we've been on less than a half hour. This has been this has been great. And you took the words out of my mouth, Larry. I just wanted to ask if you wanted to shout anybody out before we kind of wrap up here.
I get one more thing for my son. If I could do something for my son, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
If my son is not even 19 years old, he's has a very successful car rental company. I'm very proud of him. I'm going to give you some information, a number. If you're ever in the Florida area and anybody comes here on vacation, if you want to rent anything from a boat to a fancy car, my son will take care of it. His name is Cody. Cody Arch. My shoot name is, Larry Arch, obviously. My son is Cody Arch. His number is 954-257-3530. Once again, it's 954-257-3530. He's also teaching a seminar on how somebody could start their own car rental business. It could actually work, and it would work great in Los Angeles as well. But if you go to Lux Learns, LuxLearns, Lux Learns, that will give you the information to where you could get signed up for a seminar, or you can call him. And then if you want to rent a car, you go to SoFlo for South Florida, SOFLO, luxrents.com, SOFLOO, You guys see the amazing array of cars that he has. They have access to boats. I'm really proud of him. He really has been quite an entrepreneur. And thank you for allowing me to give you that information.
Absolutely. And on social media, I will be sure to put that out there as well.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I have one question to ask you, Larry, and Rob before we leave. But Rob, before we do that, any plugs for yourself?
You can listen to my podcast. It's called Don't Get This Twisted. It's on all the platforms, Apple, Spotify, all that stuff. Just me and an old high school friend who come up with like different things and kind of give a female and a male perspective on how crazy this planet is. And we talk relationship stuff and a lot of other things. Just a good old time and listening to people jabberjaw.
Don't get this twisted, right?
Yep. Don't get this twisted.
All right. I'll send the word out.
Cool.
Chris, plugs for yourself.
Well, this show, of course, and then if you have a charity, if you're a nonprofit, if you're a school, if you're anything that wants to put on a fundraiser, a charity auction in specific, I will be more than happy to help out with that. Specifically, a charity benefit auction. As auctioneer, I would be hands-on prior, during, and after the event and the gala. And the company is KMK Auctions, but you can reach me through Facebook and get on there. Just message me on Messenger or my email, chriscloss1@AOL.com. And if you're looking for to raise some donations, raise some charities, some funds for a worthwhile cause, I would be more than happy to help out and to perform as auctioneer. And again, hands-on prior, during, and post event. KRIS, KLOSS, the number 1 at AOL.com, or again, just hit me up on Facebook, Instant Messenger.
Awesome.
Hey, before you ask your question, I'll just throw out a little news for you guys. Yutaka Yoshi, he's an All Japan Pro wrestler. He died at 50 years old following a match today.
Oh, wow, no. Really?
50 years old. It looks like condition suddenly deteriorated after. So he went to a hospital in the waiting room and he died in the waiting room.
Oh my gosh.
50 years old.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. He was big. I mean, he fought Ricky Koshu in 98. So he was a big time All Japan guy.
Wow. Terrible.
Yeah.
All the best to his family.
Absolutely.
Ask away, Mr. Eric.
Yeah. Boy, after that kind of brings us down to a somber note. You know what, Larry, we would love to have you on in the future and do just basically an interview on your whole career, everything you've done from the start of your career to the end of your career. But I know, unfortunately, this is the Wrestling with Reality podcast. And the reality is, unfortunately, for a lot of people in the wrestling business, it begins and ends once the bell rings. But I know both you and Rob have success outside of the business. Would you like to talk about just life lessons you've learned that you could share on to other people in professional wrestling that could help them in life beyond the business as well?
I would tell somebody who's getting into wrestling, this is not the business where you put all your eggs in one basket. That is, you become the quintessential mark when you do that. I'll tell people that my favorite years of wrestling were my first 6 and my last 6. Everything in the middle was fine, but it was a little stressful. I spent a lot of time with it. I was hoping that this break would happen and that break wouldn't happen. But what I did was I bought a pool company. And I said, all right, so I had a reality check, and I want all young wrestlers to have a reality check. This is the most fun thing in the world you could do. You're not gambling. You're not out Saturday night, doing drugs or cheating on your wife. You're going out with your friends and you're having quality sports entertainment matches. You're not being unambitious if you sit there and take the attitude, hey, you know what? This is going to be a supplemental income potentially, but I'm going to go out and get myself an associate's degree. I mean, I'm going to be 59. I'm a certified medical assistant. I'm a state real estate agent. I owned a pool company. Point being is, if you're going to get into wrestling, number one, concentrate on cardio. I don't care how big your muscles are. If you can't get from point A to point B, it doesn't do you any good. Concentrate on cardio and don't put all your eggs in one basket. And you will find you'll probably enjoy it more. You'll probably have more fun with it. And if it works out, great. That's wonderful for you. But be reasonable, be intellectual, be thought-provoking. Remember, life is you're playing. You want to play chess, not checkers. You want to think a couple of moves ahead. Don't just concentrate on wrestling, because odds are it's not going to happen. Odds are you're not good enough, or odds are that's reality. I don't want to be the bucket of cold water, but I want to be face of reality. Have a contingency plan, and that's about it. Be smart, be safe, tuck your chin.
Well, couldn't have said it better, and thank you for that, for those parting words. And all you young fans, wrestlers out there, I hope you take heed into what Mr. Ludden just said. And man, this was great, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
If Rob, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
My only thing is, for people who are already in the business, that there's life after it. So when it's time to hang them up, there's other things other than wrestling. Don't think that wrestling is your only life. It's not. There's many, many better years after, and Look, have more hobbies than just wrestling. It'll get you a lot further in life.
Couldn't have said those both better. Yeah, thank you guys both.
Awesome. Thank you.
Chris, take it home, buddy.
Well, let's do this. Again, Larry, like Eric said, to resemble his comments, yes, absolutely. We'd love to have you back on. And this was an absolute honor. This was great. It's a fun journey talking about what we all grew up loving and talking about how to preserve some of the things that still can work today and shed some light on what's going on and what's not going on. So it's great to be a part of this. Once again, Larry, thank you. Rob, Crayz, as always, a pleasure. Eric Malikian, one of the greats right here. My name is Chris Kloss. Thank you all for joining us on this live edition of the Wrestling with Reality podcast. For Rob, for Larry, for Eric, my name is Chris Kloss, and we will see you all right here next time on another edition of the Wrestling with Reality podcast. So long, everybody.